A BetterHelp ad. Louis Capaldi partnered with BetterHelp to get word out about how important therapy can be.
Or I struggle most weeks to get myself up and ready and go to therapy or whatever. Like even like to open the laptop to talk to my therapist sometimes can be really difficult. But I do it because I realise how important it is for me to continue to feel good. Like 'cause I felt the best I've felt in a long time through therapy.
Learn more about online therapy at betterhelp.com.
Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 350 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game.
From an audience perspective, how do you fix your warehouse operations so they actually help your business grow instead of slowing it down? Carl will share how outdated warehouses hurt business performance and how smart strategies, the right technology, and the people-first approach can turn them into powerful, efficient assets. Stay tuned as we talk about how to rethink your warehouse, boost your bottom line, and future-proof your operations for real growth. Our guest today is Carl Ferreira Calvet, founder of ZIC, a consulting firm focused on transforming outdated warehouses into efficient tech-powered operations. With a background in automotive engineering and 4 years of Big Four consulting experience, Carl specializes in Oracle Cloud, SCM, and warehouse optimization, helping businesses cut inventory costs and boost performance. His global upbringing, raised by parents who traveled the world for work, inspired his own journey from France to Montreal, where he now calls home. Driven by curiosity and passion for problem solving, Carl brings a rare blend of grit, tech savvy, and strategic insight to every client he serves. His personal role model? Well, it's explorer Mike Horan, whose resilience and pioneering spirit mirrors Carl's own approach to business and life. Carl, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here today, sir. Welcome. And do you have a favorite quote or saying, sir?
Thank you very much for having me on the podcast, Bernie. Wayne, super happy to be here. The one I use often is in every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks. And the reason for that is because my mom is just an avid walker and she taught me how to look at trees and enjoy stuff outside. And that's a refresher that gives you some brain power for everything you need to do in the day.
That's actually very stellar and very healthy. What's your business tagline?
So basically now with ZIC, what we try to do is to accelerate the digital transformation of your business with optimizing technology-enabled warehouse operations.
So leaving the big four, the big firms that help, everybody goes, they're so big. They'll do my auditing. They'll do my everything from the management. What made you decide to leave that behind?
So it's been a journey. I spent over 6 years, almost 7 years actually with Deloitte and PwC. I didn't have a definite moment, but over time I realized that many mid-sized business in particular were kind of underserved by some of the traditional consulting models. And by that, I mean, even though they could reach their potential objectives, it was not necessarily done in the optimal way for them. They needed, more agile, like cost-effective solution that are tailored to their unique challenges, right? Especially in the warehouse operation. So from that, I kind of decided to move on and establish my own company, focus on providing hands-on, customized consulting that can drive results for those companies. Small and medium warehouses often struggle with visibility or like process efficiency that are critical issues that often can be solved without like large scale, investment or automation, just by modernizing workflows and introducing common inventory warehouse management solutions.
Just to give us a bit of perspective, because a lot of people don't necessarily have a warehouse per se. There are some medium-sized businesses. What's it cost? What's kind of a ballpark figure? And I know you be down specific if I'm, doing microchips versus boxes or loaves of bread. But what is kind of the budget range that these folks are operating in for having a system that tracks and connects all that together?
It's a great question. It can range a lot, right? So some basic inventory management system, could cost between $30 to $400 a month, depending on the user base and the functionalities you're looking at on a subscription model. Some of the bigger ones like Oracle, it can be, north of 5,000, 6,000 K per month, depending also on the functionalities. Typically, our annual spend, we could look at several thousands for sure, depending on the size of the business and the needs.
I talked to a lot of solopreneurs, And there's some that if something's in their warehouse, it's there because they put it there. So they know exactly where it is and how to take it out. When do you know that you need processes, when you need solutions? Your brain isn't what's getting the product out the door because you put it there.
It's definitely going to be linked to volume when you operate like a stockroom kind of operation where it's several square feet and you just stock things like in a hospital stockroom. Then potentially you can go without, right? But at some point with cloud solutions, you have a solution for any scale. So it's better to invest early in those solutions and digitize as much as possible because down the line, when you plan to scale, you already have a good data foundation to go forward.
Your background is diverse and enriched, right? Compared to a lot of other folks, people that have been living in Canada for all their lives. How's that influenced and how's that impacted how you view business and interact in the business space?
So yeah, for sure. I mean, I was born a European and, as you said, I moved to Montreal more than 7 years ago, proudly Canadian. I've been exposed to different culture. Like well, during my engineering background, I've moved to Italy, the UK, Belgium as well for years. So there are different business practices and everything. I think it's for me very like rich as a background and experience because it enhanced my adaptability and communication skills. I'm sure you can still hear a bit of an accent in English, but it enabled me to connect with different clients, regions, and industries effectively. And also, I think now what I'm trying to do as an independent is to get some of those global perspectives, even though my core focus is North America, because some of the practices are not as widely used here versus some other regions. So I try to keep that in mind as well.
So when I think of logistics, I think about taking a box somewhere and putting it somewhere else. But I understand from your bio that you have a whole values-driven process to this. Can you unpack that for me?
At ZIC, we really focus on the warehouse operations. I worked over the years, right, on the different kind of logistics and the different areas of supply chain for sure. But what we focus on is really the warehouse operations because we understood what is the impact of warehouse operations in particular on the businesses in terms of as a cost center and the benefits we could also bring by focusing on these, especially when it comes to digital transformation. The vision overall is really to transform the warehouses into enablers of the digital innovation of the business that kind of successfully support the digital transformation of the business rather than basically drag it down as a cost center. I'll definitely deep dive in some more elements, but that's the general idea. 20
years ago, maybe it's 30 now, we had companies like Toyota saying, oh, we're going to have just in time. We're not going to warehouse. There was a talk about eliminating the warehouse and having the parts show up on the factory floor. And now with possibly some political pressures, supply chain is looking at life differently. Can you unpack those two bookends for me?
Sure. The idea, Wayne, I agree with you, is the ideal, right? Like it's the scenario that any business would like to do, almost like the make to order or configure to order workflow, where you get an order, get it ready, and then you ship. The reality is very different. Depending on the industries like telecom or retail, it's not really an option. You have to have some stock to afford variability demand. Overall, yeah, there's definitely on the supply chain space, especially these days, I think it's a pretty good example, right? With everything going on, US, Canada, and even across the board, there's definitely some challenges that require more flexibility. One of the things I recently heard is that the supply chain of the future is all about adaptability rather than just having everything planned. Predictive analytics and things are here, but you need to have the ability to see your inventory and have data available to react as efficiently as you can.
What do people think they know about warehousing and logistics and don't?
In general, there are a few things. One question that generally comes up is around when does a business need some kind of warehouse optimization, right? For example, like 2 or 3 ideas I have in mind is are you able to answer, the question, how much inventory do we really have right now on the floor? If it's not the case, then, you probably have to rethink about where are you standing in terms of your warehouse management, practices and knowledge. when you ask a warehouse manager how good the operations are going, he might mention a few things. But when you deep dive into the data, you'll see that there are actually quite a lot of late shipments or wrong mispicks or even growing return rates in the past few months. Some elements are invisible to an eye that is basically not prepared, let's say, or don't have the right tools. And the third thing is also relating to staff. If the team is constantly acting like a firefighter, manually entering data here and there and printing label, and where basically they don't necessarily need to do it because order consolidation tools are not enabled, or even chasing lost stock, these are signs that operations have outgrown your systems. It's time to look at external expertise or smarter tools.
Two things cropped into my head as you're talking about products. Usually if it's a widget, it just sits there and nothing happens to it until it gets moved. How do you handle perishable goods? Is that another layer of complexity? I know it's moving from point A to point B, but does that add more taxation to the overall system of understanding, like, the product's got a shelf life, maybe of, let's say it's bananas, right? Or certain medications that if they're in liquid format and they might have a really short lifespan, or they're refrigerated. Does that put a real extra spin on things?
I wish I had a little bit more experience with the food and beverage industry and that actually managed those kind of items and SKUs. But what I know is that definitely, yes, there is an impact in terms of tracking the data, right? In those systems, you're going to need to track, expiry dates. You're going to need to track lot numbers. So there's more information already that has to be tracked. There's also more complexity in terms of the logic. How do you allocate inventory to ship from warehouses? Is it based on FIFO, of first is expiry, first out? So there are different logics you can implement, obviously, with a good system, but it's definitely going to add a few layers on top of your typical warehouse rules.
Then you mentioned another thing, picking, which means the customer has ordered 5 different things and they're in 5 different spots inside the warehouse. When I order something online from my local online store that's huge, not to be named because they're so huge, how do you consolidate making sure that 3 or 4 things might be in the warehouse or might have to be shipped to the warehouse? Is that the next level up in being coordinated?
So technically, I think I'll give an example of a more complex operation so that we can see all the different moving pieces and where it can come from. But typically, procurement can be one option if you don't have the inventory in the warehouse. As I was saying earlier, there's either the configure or the assemble to order. If it's a manufacturing plant or the manufacturing area, that can come from here as well. So at the end of the day, if you have a good WMS system, it's actually going to be able to, based on your priorities, okay, am I going to allocate from that automation system, let's say a vertical lift module or carousel or things like that? Do I want to allocate from the aisles? Okay, if I don't have it, do I need to place a PO or manufacture it or things like that? So the WMS is not going to direct necessarily like those operations because it's really about managing the inventory and the storage, but it will interface to other systems, to direct the ideal, execution of the picking scenario.
All the consulting firms you mentioned, all are outgrowths of accounting firms. Accountants tend to use line items, debits, and credits, where they wouldn't have the foggiest clue about how you get a box off a shelf and put it on a truck. Can you actually tell me about how real world has changed your thought processes about how to manage inventory when you're actually putting something in a truck?
Yeah, so when I worked at Deloitte and PwC, it is definitely a huge offering in terms of the services. I think what I learned from the real world, but also from my experience at these firms, the rigorous approach to problem solving and a deep understanding of the complex supply chain systems and interactions. I decided to focus on warehouse operations for various reasons, basically aligning the technology with the business objectives, managing stakeholders, and other lessons learned that underpin now my methodology, like with ZIC, come from, this kind of experience at larger firms, because they have also some good approach to, look at things from I would say from a, higher level and more strategic perspective. We've done so much work across industries and different clients that the idea is to come with a solution that is both strategic and practical. So I've seen like so many firsthand, like larger implementation that, had issues because of of not addressing basically the problems head on or like from a strategic point of view. Now, even if I'm focusing on really hands-on and practical solution with ZIC, I always kind of keep that strategic mindset as well. And, I hope it kind of instill also some good results into the overall partnership with the customers.
So if a business decides, listen, I'm growing to scale and, they're maybe not at the complexity of, let's say, an auto manufacturing plant. I'm making this type of models, yada, yada, yada. I need to order from another parts manufacturer to have everything kind of merge at the same time, or I'm managing food deliveries. But I'm starting up and I realize, okay, I can't track everything. I need to next level up. How much time does it take to go from there's a box on the shelf to my accounting package knows I've got 10 widgets and I consume 5 per month or 5 per week, whatever it is. How long does it take them to actually ramp up from a dead stop to we're running smooth?
The short answer is it depends as a good consultant, but yeah, it will really depend on a few things. But I think the number one is, as we mentioned earlier, what is their current level of maturity, like in terms of, processes, in terms of technology, and even like people in terms of the training and, are they using a lot of temps, or do they have a staff that really know the operations very well and been there for a while? So depending on those different areas, the approach I would personally take usually is kind of really walk down the floor, right? Like, and meet the different kind of stakeholders, business level, operation level, and basically spend probably, on an assessment, you would take maybe, I think, it could be as short as 1 week or 2 weeks, to assess like warehouse operations and basically their efficiency or operational efficiency and digital maturity. Then based on that, implement the changes. It can range from a month of work if we want to focus on some operational improvements, like some quick wins, redesigning some of the processes, maybe optimizing some of their existing configuration in their system. So not investing into more complex purchases or research. And for typical WMS end-to-end implementation, where you basically do a selection of solutions, you evaluate the fit gap, and then you implement the system, it could be 9 months or even up to a year. It really depends on which kind of project you're tackling and for which size as well.
There comes a size of business and a group of tech specialists that when they're trying to talk to you, it sounds much closer to witchcraft than it does about solutions. Can you please explain to me what Oracle Cloud WMS is? What's a WMS?
Good question. So yeah, Oracle Cloud WMS is basically one of these leading warehouse management systems out there that are basically cloud-based. And it's really a solution that is very scalable. That's the difference with cloud applications. They give you real-time control, over your inventory, the orders, even potentially like the labor, right? The workforce. But it's before everything else, it's a flexible solution. From my experience, and just full disclosure, most of my experiences on the Oracle Cloud applications can suit a medium business, like 50 million revenue annually with growing needs, or it can fit like large operation, multi-billion dollar, like that have very high complexity. And it supports like kind of barcode scanning, mobile apps, automation interfaces, even some kind of AI demand planning or advanced manufacturing. So it's really kind of not an all-in-one solution that will supervise your warehouse operations. That's kind of in a simple term, it's kind of a digital manager of your operation that knows at every second where is a piece of inventory, what are the orders, what are the incoming shipments, and what orchestrates all of these things together. So it's going to create, some replenishment tasks, some picking tasks, some like proof tasks, etc. So all these things are obviously quite a lot of configuration and implementation, but that's the overall kind of idea.
This something else just popped into my head as you said picking, and it's robotics. Does robotics play a role in this, or are you already at the next tier level if you're using robots to go, the machine's going to pick my widget from shelf 4, aisle 3?
Yeah. So any kind of automation can be embedded within an IT architecture with the WMS. The reason for that is, without getting into too many technical details, like those applications, most of them, like now they rely on like some kind of APIs, obviously. So when you have your robotic application or vertical lift module, carousel system, all those automated material handling equipment will have some kind of execution or management system on top of them that will manage their operation and tasks. So as long as you can interface and integrate those two, and that's what I've done in the past, then your WMS is really the orchestrator. So it will say, if I give you a very simple flow, let's say there's an order, a sales order that is placed, interface to WMS. WMS then will basically look at how to allocate this order, which inventory it should pick it from, etc. And if it determines that it's from one of those automated systems, then it's basically going to interface the information to that control system, right, for the automation or the robot that you're mentioning. And the robot is going to complete the task and basically send, a pick confirmation or whatever task confirmation it is back to WMS. It's going to be basically everything integrated as a single platform. So
How do you know when you've outgrown the spreadsheet, and how do you deal with the wrong terror of diving into the pool?
for those still using spreadsheets, what we need to mention is that spreadsheets don't scale very well. They don't talk to your warehouse either. So every kind of manual entry is a risk, and you're kind of flying blind, right? So during like some peak times, it's almost like upgrading from a paper map to a GPS. Basic systems like inventory management systems can improve accuracy by over 30%. Then some of the costs, like inventory carrying costs, can be reduced by 10 or 15% with those systems. The approach you probably need to take, as I mentioned before, is kind of ask yourself questions with an expert or on your own. What is your digital maturity right now? What is it like that? Is there any pain point that are clearly visible to your operation and you've been just hiding, in the back door? Because if they are, then there's a good chance you can switch from simple spreadsheets and paper-based work to more digitized solutions for a very limited cost.
When you take a company and you're working with from cold start, greenfield, or someone who's migrating over, how do you help them? How do you ensure that they stay on track? It's like learning how to drive a car, right? You're given the keys to the car, but you're 16 and life's grand. It's going to take some while to get used to it, right? How do you ensure that they stay on track with the tasks they have to do? Like, there's certain steps you have to repeat. Event happens, etc. How do you manage your clients?
So I think technology adoption, it's actually most important for results to show on the long term. And this can be done with proper training and coaching through the technology implementation work. Whether it's operational excellence or technology, it applies for both. In both cases, I think the focus, or at least the way, I try to focus on things, is I make sure I identify, some super users, or like some ownership on the client side, so that they don't feel the typical approach of, oh, okay, we have consultants coming, they're going to do their work and they'll tell us what to do. No, I want you to be my partner. We work together on a team, and you have an ownership on those tasks. And obviously I'm here, to make you achieve the objectives we defined for your business, but there's user ownership. The second part is also being very transparent about the objectives for the company so that you can measure them. Because most of the issues I've seen in the relationship with the consulting partner is when the business feels like they're not happy with the result. We're like asking, okay, but what was the expectation? And there's no expectation. So there was no actual anything to measure against. I wanted to bring as many quick wins as I can, but we need to identify clearly what are the objectives, are there KPIs in place, or that we want to put in place, to justify some kind of ROI down the line. And also, I think the last thing is the embedded, like, kind of feedback loop, right? So that's something that as an independent consultant now, I really focus on is making regular touch point on my performance, on what we achieve together, and making sure we're on track. So that basically it's not just a handoff of a system, for example, in the technology implementation, but it's actually part of a governance structure where we train staff and put the system as part of the whole business culture.
The nice thing about somebody saying they're a consultant is there's a group of people that don't know. What are the 2 or 3 questions that you should be asking somebody who says they're a warehouse management specialist to say, okay, that's the secret handshake you're in, or, you really should go back to your knitting?
Actually, it's funny you asked that because I made the transition pretty recently and I had some of those questions as a business owner. If I want to use a particular supplier or consultant, I'm going to make sure that this person is qualified, right? For a warehouse consultant, expert, or specialist, there's one question I would ask straight away. Have you actually walked the floor of a warehouse like mine before? Whether it's industry specific, but also in terms of complexity, like, and making sure that it's a person that is really hands-on and actually the strategy of supply chain. And yeah, we know, tariffs and demand, it's complicated. No. Do you actually understand like what's happening on the warehouse floor, all the operations and workflows? Having someone ideally blends a functional understanding of warehouse operations and a technological system understanding. Nowadays, you can do operational efficiency, but to me, I don't think it's very, very relevant if it doesn't involve some kind of digitization or technology effort. So someone that has kind of those two brains put together, I think is going to bring much more value to your business. And the last thing is, it's kind of related to what we discussed earlier, but it was such an important question that you asked, Bernie. It's about what's your plan maybe to train the team and make this solution stick like 6 months from now, for example, right? So what is the approach? Have you thought about the process to make sure that the technology or the processes we implement are going to stick and are going to show some value down the line? So these are the 3 areas I prioritize even myself.
Let's assume that warehousing as we understand it is 40 years old. Maybe a little more, let's say 40 years old. What do you see coming in the next 5 years that is going to make it smoother, more functional? What roadblocks or traps are there?
So honestly, I'm trying to stay on top of this question, and I'm happy you asked that because I've been to ProMat in Chicago in March, and which is an amazing conference for anyone who's interested in warehousing. There was a lot of stuff among the AI and all the digital twins and automation solutions. Now, as for any new technology, there's a lot of hype around it as well. My overall thought process is if you want to grow your business and your digital foundation is not reliable or strong enough, there will still be a growing need for, kind of digitization of the operation with like barcode scanning. It could be, WMS implementation, inventory management system. More established operations will probably be able to use mobile driven processes. So maybe some wearable kind of scanners or even tablets or things that can make you manage your operation from the click of a finger, right? Also AGVs, so automated guided vehicles was a big thing at ProMat. There's much more need and interest into those solutions because again, flexibility, right? So it's not like a big carousel system or big automation system that takes a huge space in your warehouse. It's autonomous vehicles that will take the inventory, move it around, and give you efficiency in the process. I could expand a lot, but that's where I'm sitting right now.
I see a future for Roomba in the house now. Go get me a beer. Carl, if someone is listening to this and they go, listen, you know what? I need someone to help me in my warehouse, either from get-go to I've got something, but I'm not solid enough. How do they get a hold of you? And what areas do you service?
I think, if the first thing maybe they can do is thinking about designing your operations for visibility, right? So that's I think a common theme we discussed is if you don't have the data or if you don't know where your inventory is, then it's going to be a problem. Even if you're a small business, try to find a cloud inventory solution like that. Make sure you label things, accurately, that you track as many operations like digitally. It's really critical to have that data foundation, right? That then you can scale with and optimize and add automation later much easier. When it comes to our help with a ZIC, so basically there are a few areas. But I would say for me, the bigger focus is going to be around digitization. There are two services around that. There's one, which is inventory management system or WMS system selection, evaluation, and implementation. This is kind of basically making sure that you invest into a solution that is suited for you and is going to bring value down the line. The second one is also around operational efficiency. It can be done on two different aspects. There's the basic analysis of your pick path and what are your basically picking strategies, and are there anything we can implement around potentially some of the flows in the warehouse, space utilization, things like that. And there's also a more data-driven approach that we take, where if you have an inventory management system or WMS system already, then we would basically extract the information from there and run deep dive analysis to see where there are some pain points. And that we would, of course, validate with some, feedback from the team and actual person interviews. And the last point that I'm actually trying to grow and develop in, because to be fully transparent, I need to upskill a lot on this, but it's new technology and emerging tech adoption. So when it comes to AI tools or chatbot for some of the warehouse operations, for example, or querying your information, it could be automation as well, like the AGVs, or implementing some of the automated solutions. That's something that is also important for us. So we actually do market research and help you identify the potential of those solutions and the feasibility for your business.
So you just go to your website. You want them to email you?
I have a website, yes. So it's www.zicsolutions.com. And we kind of have use cases and information there. They can fill in the form if they want more information, and we'll contact them as soon as possible. I also have my LinkedIn page, so I'm always happy to see new messages.
Excellent. And do you serve the North American market, or are you global?
Yeah, I'm going to say North American, because even if I'm European born, I think I have more understanding of the North American market. So yeah, that's my focus for now.
I want to say thank you to Carl, my co-host Wayne, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. If you have a warehouse, Carl's got a solution to help you pick up the performance and make your operation run that much smoother. And if you're using Oracle, all the better, because he's got a strong knowledge base within that space.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIINSIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer: please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.